I'd like to welcome you to this edition of the PRS Journal Club podcast with your hosts, Dr. Sammy Ciano, Amanda Silva, and Raj Shah Martinez. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to the August 2016 PRS Journal Club podcast. I'm Amanda Silva, and I'm joined by my fellow PRS resident ambassadors, Sammy Ciano and Raj Shah Martinez. Today, we welcome our guest discussant, Dr. Deborah Johnson. Dr. Johnson is in private practice in Sacramento, California, and amongst her many leadership and volunteer positions in the past, she's an upcoming ASPS president. We'll be discussing an article by Losi et al. Out of the University of Pittsburgh entitled Time versus Competency-Based Residency Training. This article offers a comprehensive summary of competency-based training, and it discusses the pros and cons associated with this training model. And this is really important to us because during our time while we've been training, this has actually been implemented. So it's a nice roadmap of things to consider. As far as the pros that they say, they argue that we actually already have a hybrid type model where those who need to towards the end of their training actually will perform supplementary training to achieve competency if they've been deemed not at the point to graduation. They also say that if we do this competency-based training, it actually ensures a level of accountability to the public and individual patients versus the training model that we've done in the past. They also say that if we use this model, residents could achieve competency at an accelerated pace with associated savings in time and money. And they show that evidence of early and sustained improvement has already been shown in resident technical ability in models that have already adopted this training model. They also quote some evidence that there's comparable, if not potentially higher, in-training exam scores in residents who have gone through this model already. They also note that a great advantage of using this model is that it offers the ability to identify deficiencies in knowledge and ability in the residents more specifically and in a more timely fashion to avoid any remediation time. So instead of towards the time where someone's getting ready to graduate, people start to realize they may not be ready to, they would be identified earlier on. We would be able to adjust their training course, and then they wouldn't necessarily have to make up that time in the long term. They also note that, this isn't just positive for trainees who are struggling a little bit. This is also better for trainees who excel because at the opposite end of the spectrum, they have these residents who have clearly demonstrated an accelerated progress. It would allow them the potential to graduate early. Therefore, they could take more time to engage in electives or research or go on to a formal fellowship earlier on. And then the final pro that they mention is that we are starting to implement these milestones, but there's not a lot of data or validity behind why certain milestones are being picked. And so if we engage in this model, we would be able to provide feedback to further validate the milestones. On the flip side, some of the cons that they mention is that in order to implement this, you need to have a lot more organizational and administrative time. And so this may involve needing to hire ancillary staff that weren't required before. It also, some of the arguments against it say that this may reduce trainee assessments into a series of procedures and lists that need to be checked off one by one rather than looking at things in a whole way. And then there also is this concern that if we use this competency model, that it will further promote people just kind of trying to check off the boxes and not really looking at their training in a holistic way, which the authors kind of argue this is a weak argument, and I tend to agree with them. I think that, if anything, it would more encourage trainees to what goals they need to meet and would work towards those goals. Specifically, they mentioned in the article that plastics would be a good residency model to try competency-based training, and because we tend to have a profession that's based off more principle thinking rather than specific procedures. And given that our training is a 6-year time frame, that it allows a little more wiggle room for these changes in residents who are at different competency levels. And then they also make this argument that I thought was kind of interesting. I'd love to hear what Dr. Johnson has to say on this, that this could help us with our scope of practice issues, which I don't quite see how that translates, but given that, I would open up discussion now, and specifically Dr. Johnson, if you could comment on that specific point that they made, which I personally am not seeing that connection, but I'd be curious what you think.
Yeah, I thought this was a very interesting study, and certainly the ACGME and the American Board of Plastic Surgery are vigorously pursuing competency-based training. It has seemed in the past that residency has really been sort of an indentured servitude, and you sign on for a certain amount of time, and you hope that you are going to be able to be comfortable at the end of your residency going out into practice. And what we found over the past few years is that more residents are feeling less comfortable with entering their own practice at the end of their residency, and that's been evidenced by the increasing numbers that are seeking fellowships, the fact that the work hours have been limited, and the fact that, with the internet and patient rating sites and that sort of thing, it's really hard to, you have to sort of be able to hit the ground running, because if anything goes awry in your first few months of practice, patients can just skewer you on the internet and then you'll never have a practice. So I can understand kind of the discomfiture that a lot of new graduates are feeling, wanting to be really well prepared to enter the workplace. And so I think the idea of competency-based training is wonderful, because, they talk about in the Pittsburgh model that they have this, in the sixth year they can do this remediation. Mm-hmm. That's sort of too late. You need to be remediated all the way along. And so I'm really excited about the fact that if you look at the paper that was published by the ACGME and the American Board of Plastic Surgery, it talks about how they want to proceed with this competency, and it's starting at a low level. They have level 1 through 5, and level 1 is basically an intern, and level 5 is kind of a professor. But mm-hmm. showing here are the knowledge and the surgical skills and the systems knowledge that you need to have as you move through these different levels, and that can be started when you're an intern and when you're a second year and when you're a third year, so that if there's issues that require remediation, they can be dealt with early on, rather than letting you get to your sixth year and saying, oh man, you got to spend an extra year because you're no good, or you're not ready, which is not fair. We should be treating our residents like we do our children. If we see something wrong, we fix it right away. We try to school them on how to improve, how to correct things, and provide them with the additional tutoring, if you will, in order to get them up to speed. I think it's going to require a little bit of a paradigm shift in how we go through our training. It can't just be, well, here are your 4 months on hand, and here are your 4 months on breast reconstruction, and here are your 4 months on the burn unit. You're going to have to schedule in some elective time within each of those years, so that you can either be remediated during that period of time, or if you are, if you're an accelerated learner, you can use that time to do something more interesting. You can delve deeper into a portion of your training and achieve an even higher level. Or you can graduate early. So it's gonna require a little more adaptability on the part of the training programs, but I see it as incredibly exciting and a way to really give residents some ownership of their education, so that they can remediate, they can accelerate, they can go back. So if they find something that they love, they can perhaps spend some more time doing that to get some more information. I think it's kind of exciting. The other thing I think is interesting is that it's going to require not just your attending evaluating you. It's going to require your attending, the nurses, the patients, other people, perhaps in the administrative system, everyone evaluating the resident to make sure that they have a more full and complete knowledge of how to take care of patients from many different aspects. So it's going to be tricky, but I think it will be, it'll be a really good way to educate our residents.
I agree. I think, having filled out some self-evaluations on the milestones, the questions are so specific and detailed. So they really will ask you, what's your comfort level? What are you doing at every different level? I think it's just an amazing opportunity for us to really even grow and strengthen our training. I think a lot is said of, you hear a lot of people say the old days we had more hours, we were in the hospital more. But, I'm a little more optimistic. I think we just are training a little bit smarter. We have access to a lot more information. We have, which can be a detriment in some ways, but fundamentally, I think that we are very blessed in that we aren't really in the dark age of plastic surgery. We really have a lot of expertise and knowledge in a lot of different areas. The great papers have been written. We have almost an abundance of text instead of reading from, maybe just one volume. We have so many different ways to get information. We have so many people at various programs to give us information, and that's not even talking about what we can learn with videos and video libraries that have been developed. But I think at the core, every program has to train good surgeons, and I think that's why having the Milestones Project is, are you comfortable doing these procedures? Are you comfortable teaching these procedures? Are you comfortable with the different, major areas of plastic surgery? And if not, where can you direct your energy? I think that's so important. So I'm glad the authors are calling that into attention. And I think, the Milestone Projects will only be further enhanced with time. I think the point that you need a lot of ancillary support is true, because I know my program coordinator is pulling out her hair trying to crunch all the data for the academic commission meetings. It's really a lot to do, and since this is a relatively new initiative, it almost seems like there has to be a person that works hand in hand with the program director to guide the information processing of these type of results.
Yeah, and I think
these
not
are all
even just sorry, Raj, just one tiny quick point.
Yeah.
I think not even just ancillary staff to help with the crunching of the numbers, but also extended providers. I think that if you have this kind of fluid system where you have residents leaving early, and I think you have to have more support as far as like PAs and nurse practitioners to help out with just keeping patient care streamlined.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of exciting because you don't necessarily have to go in lockstep from July to the end of June. There may be ways where if it's a little more elective type based that you could move through perhaps a little bit faster, or you could take a year off to have a baby, or you could go into the lab for a period of time, if you weren't under the gun to keep moving, every year ahead. So I think it opens up a world of possibilities that may not be known, but it could be very exciting for training plastic surgeons. And I think all of us want to enter our practice feeling comfortable that we are safe practitioners and that we know how to deal with complications and that we can communicate well with our patients and that we know the regulatory environment and we know how to bill and, there's so many facets to being a plastic surgeon that we haven't in the past paid particular attention to in residency. And so this competency-based thing, I think is really exciting because it's forcing us to look at what makes a whole plastic surgeon and making sure that we educate our residents to be able to be successful.
Yeah, those are all fantastic points, and sorry I've been interrupting everyone, but just a quick, not to be sort of too much of a Debbie Downer, but just maybe devil advocate a couple points. I think we have 360, what we call 360 reviews, where it's everyone essentially, the residents to attending to residents to each other, staff, nursing patients, as much as we can from all of those. And I totally agree. I think milestones, the specificity there and the detail of it is critical to sort of augment that. Just a couple points from things we were all saying. I do agree. I think we're all doing way more fellowships than we have in the past. People are not going to practice right away. But in my mind, I wonder how much of that is also just getting the next job. I think is there a demand for academic jobs to be fellowship trained, to then have an edge, to bring something new to a community or new to the table where a market may already be saturated and you come in with this fellowship where you can sort of advertise that and have an expertise in a niche. So I think that there's some component to that, more so than just not being comfortable with everything, although both of them certainly play into fact. Another key issue that I think, now I'm sure you guys as well are seeing this in NYU and Chicago being chiefs, is that there is a service requirement of having enough residents for case coverage, enough residents to take call, et cetera. So I think I love the idea of having, sort of an accelerated track, and if you meet it, boom, you're good to go and you go on to your elective. And so we have to figure out how to balance that, the needs of a residency program of service and education, keeping in mind that education is our principal focus. But I think that, there's a balance there that people will be hesitant with. And then the pessimist in me or the realist in me wonders, how many programs are really going to embrace the idea, okay, well, now we've got residents and wow, these, they're crushing the milestones, they're doing really well, let's go ahead and give them time off, versus saying, well, you know what, they're okay in A, B, and C, but they're really not good at these other procedures, let's remediate them, maybe they need more time, they didn't meet the milestones, objectively, then they have to, instead of 6 years, now it's 6.5 for that person. So I think there's a slippery slope there that we'll have to balance because all of us are going to be better or worse than others in certain areas, right? Some may be more professional, may be better at, carpal tunnel versus, breast micro, et cetera. So I wonder where is there a balance of, is there a minimum and how do we standardize that? So, if I'd say someone is just deficient overall, but still okay to do general, how can we create standardization of that? So I think that can be a potential problem area. And then, in that vein, I think that the programs that are doing this really well, should probably write about their experiences and describe the models that have worked for them, how they're implementing these, how they're balancing all these factors. And then ultimately the RRC is going to really, I think, have to step up and give guidance on, this is how you do it. And people who may be falling out of the line come in and sort of right the ship to some degree. Because I think it's an overall great idea, but I just see some sort of areas that we really need to, I think, shore up, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Raj. And I mean, if you see the example programs that it's been successful in so far, it's an orthopedic surgery program at University of Toronto, which is a huge program. And the physician who has that, he's mentioned they have a lot of PAs, they have a lot of help, and so they're able to do this. And then one of, I think, the leaders in plastics, Pitt's a very big program too, and so they can kind of absorb these changes, this fluidity, whereas if you're at a program with one resident a year, it's kind of tough,
Well, and Pitt is 7 years, right? I mean, they have a year of research built in to have that flexibility. Yeah. Are we saying that we need to do 7 years overall then? Is that where we're going or not? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I thought one thing that was interesting was they said, the ABPS requires 6 years of postgraduate training for plastic surgery, but Canada only requires 5. But you can still get American certified with the Canadian residency program. So it seems a little unfair that our residents have to go an extra year compared to the Canadians. So, I know this is going to be something in flux, but all of the ACGME is committed to this, and all of the specialty boards are having to, adapt to the core competencies, and so. It'll be a little bit of a learning curve, but I think we're going to do it as best we can. And to me, the exciting thing is that, a resident won't be left in the lurch. They'll be helped along the way. And I think trying to assure success rather than saying, well, you didn't cut the mustard and you have to leave the program. Is unfair. I mean, we should try to assure that everybody can be successful. And the more we work towards that goal, the better it is for all of us.
Agreed.
Great point.
Great. I think we'll wrap it up with that. Great discussion, guys.